Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm proud to support my colleague, Mr. Ice's bill, the Protecting Third-Party Litigation Funding from Abuse Act, and urge its passage. Third-party litigation funding, or TPLF, has grown quietly but explosively over the last decade. According to a 2022 GAO report, TPLF was estimated to be a $12 billion industry in 2021, although some sources now put it upwards of $18 billion today. Litigation finance offers a high-risk, high-reward strategy. And some in front of this committee have even equated it to basically gambling. Now there is nothing inherently wrong with financing a lawsuit. I share my colleague's sympathy for the small business or for the single investor who's forced to defend themselves against Fortune 500 corporation with deep pockets. In those instances, TPLF helps create a level playing field, and this legislation would not stop that. But when the financing is undisclosed, when it shifts control of litigation from a plaintiff to a silent investor, and when it potentially places decisions about U.S. lawsuits in the hands of foreign entities, including those with ties to geopolitical rivals, Congress has responsibility to act on this. This is precisely what H.R. 7015 does. It simply requires transparency. It requires parties to disclose to the judge who's doing the financing on the lawsuit and what rights those funders have acquired. The reason transparency is essential is because TPLF can undermine the most basic expectation of our legal system, that clients are in control of their own cases. This is not a hypothetical scenario. It is an established pattern. The most famous example was in 2023 when Cisco, the U.S. food distributor, wanted to settle a price-fixing lawsuit, but its TPLF funder, Burford Capital, countersued Cisco because under the terms of the TPLF agreement, Burford had final say in any settlement discussions. In other words, Cisco wanted to settle, but Burford wanted a higher return on investment. In several instances, funding contracts have given investors veto power over strategic decisions such as which lawyer to hire, whether and when to settle, whether to appeal, or whether to pursue certain claims. And because these arrangements are usually secret, courts are left unable to access conflicts of interest or other ethical issues that arise from these arrangements. Transparency is not only important for protecting a client's interest, but also critical for protecting national security. We know that foreign adversaries are increasingly sophisticated in using economic and legal tools to influence U.S. institutions. TPLF offers a direct avenue for foreign actors to inject capital into U.S. litigation and potentially shape legal outcomes affecting strategic industries, intellectual property, or sensitive technologies. Consider a scenario where a foreign-owned investment firm funds mass litigation targeting an American defense manufacturer. By steering litigation strategy from prolonging discovery to punishing for disclosure of proprietary information, a foreign actor could gain access to sensitive data, or weaken a critical supply chain partner. And because TPLF agreements are currently hidden, neither the court, nor the government, nor the American public would know who was ultimately pulling the strings. Or consider complex intellectual property litigation. A fund with ties to a foreign competitor could bankroll lawsuits intended to drain resources, pressure firms into an unfavorable settlement or licensing agreement, or force disclosure of trade secrets. And better yet, they could slow or altogether stop the rollout of key technology through an injunction. These are not speculative concerns. We have already witnessed foreign sovereign wealth funds invest in U.S. patent lawsuits for the purposes of gaining access to U.S. intellectual property. Disclosure will ensure that the courts knows who's involved and can take appropriate steps in response during litigation. It ensures that when strategic decisions are made in American courtrooms, they are not secretly influenced by entities whose interests may be adverse to their own. Some will argue that disclosure imposes a burden, but transparency is not a burden, it's a safeguard. The only parties disadvantaged by disclosure are those who benefit from secrecy. Our courts routinely require disclosure of financial interests, insurance, ownership structures, and conflicts. Extending that practice to litigation funders is simple fairness. In passing H.R. 7015, we reaffirm a basic principle that our civil justice system should be predictable, neutral, and accessible. I urge my colleagues to support this common sense bill. Our courts, our litigants, and our national security deserve nothing less. Thank you, and I yield back.